And here we are. Welcome, everybody, to a Deep Dialogue podcast. This is a wonderful invention that I brought into action at the beginning of COVID because I was meeting so many extraordinary people online, meaning via Zoom, and engaging in these very resonant and deep and meaningful, quintessential conversations. And it gave me the inspiration for this idea. And we have sitting in front of us the wonderful Gez Lamb, whom I'm going to introduce to you officially. Gez is actually a returning guest. Through popular acclaim, he has come back, and he's a gentleman of immense generosity of spirit, and as you will soon see, a verve for life that is just absolutely exquisite. So he's come back to be tortured by me once again.
I'm looking forward to it, for sure. Yeah, thank you for asking me back. That's I've been wanting to expand on some of the things that I said in the first podcast, and take it further with respect to what it all means for everyday living and the role of the body. Absolutely. Yeah.
And so many of you are thinking, well, who is Gez? And I know you possibly have read his bio underneath the video. But just to give you a little bit of information, Gez is a master healer practitioner who for many years has been operating through his own studio as an osteopath of a premier division. And I can safely say that he has been extraordinary with my own body when I've sought him out for consultation, and has helped me tremendously over the last year and a half to discover an even more exquisite level of optimized health. Now, you'll soon hear from great Gez Lamb that he has an extraordinary experience as an osteopath and through related practices. And so this all feeds this extraordinary genius that he holds as I said at the beginning, a master healer. He has his own specific technique that he teaches, which is called SAT, which I'm sure that Gez will reveal to us as we begin speaking. And indeed, we're recording this in October of 2024. He's just about to go off to Vancouver, where he will be teaching. And this is something that happens a tremendous amount. Whether it's Vancouver or somewhere else in the world, he is there with other practitioners, training them and taking them through his remarkable process. So, without more ado, Gez, it's wonderful to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a great opportunity.
And we decided that, to extend and to extrapolate on our initial conversation so that you could bring in even more information about deep tissue healing and the fields of tissue, we decided that we would move into the miraculous vein to hear about how the healing at core, at quintessence, really takes place through your extraordinary leadership. So the miracle of SOMA, of body SOMA, is what we're calling our dialogue today.
Right.
Perhaps you could just expand on why you feel that that's inspirational as a title and something that is also very relevant and applicable to what you do.
Yeah, I think gradually through the years, I have come to change the way that I work. I mean, I started by working in a very physical osteopathic way, and if I wanted to be sure that the adjustment had gone through, I tested for mobility before and after the mobilization technique, and if it was moving better, then we knew that the patient was going to respond. But what's happened through the years is I was told I was going to work more and more energetically, and it started to happen almost immediately. And I found that the body is talking to me in terms of the movement and motion within the energy within the system. And so I actually know from putting my hands on where the key focus is even before I've palpated for mobility. And it's like the body's now talking to me and saying those early palpations testing where everything was really tight and wasn't working too well, is now talking to me in terms of the energy that's locked up in a particular segment, or it's overstimulated at that segment, looking at the pattern as a whole, how the various parts of the spine are relating to one another, and all through the movement of energy and the quality of the energy. And so what happens now is that if I apply a technique to it, and I'll be talking a little bit about the technique, when I apply a technique to it, I'm going to feel the movement of the energy. And that tells me that the mobilization or the particular way in which I'm engaging with the system is actually working, because the energy starts to move, the energy starts to flow. And so afterwards, you stand the patient up and have a look, and you can see that as the energy moves through, hopefully they're going to be more and more grounded as each session goes on, and that the body is starting to organize itself as an instrument for living on a day-to-day level. Not just living your daily stuff, but living the higher stuff, the spiritual side of your nature, because we're spiritual beings having a human experience. And so as the body changes its patterning, as it changes its mobility, as it changes the way in which the spine harmonizes and the way it all moves and grounds, people are beginning to experience that as those changes take place, they're getting a better handle on their everyday living. And what they are learning when they come in for a treatment, what they have been learning is utilized, put together in a way that it flows better in the system. So you don't have to keep relearning it. You benefit from your experience that you've just been having in the last few months, years, or whatever. And as the body realigns itself and the energy moves better, the person experiences much more ease in their daily living. And so the knowledge that's coming through in any one individual at any time, it needs to be programmed in so that it's working for us. And it's not just knowledge in the head or knowledge in the divine centers, but it's all coming through the body, and you're living it without having to keep thinking about it, because you've done that work. The treatment has helped organize it, and then the body's working in your favor, and then you're ready for the next step. So you get to a certain level, you live it for a while, the body confirms where you are, and then as you're continuing to learn in all aspects, then you're ready for the next shift. You go up another level higher, and this is how we keep rising, and the body goes with us. The body supports the process. So I would like to talk a little bit about that.
So it's extraordinary. So if I may just extrapolate for the listener who may not be initiated fully into the subtleties and the nuance of what you're describing. To begin with, at the beginning of your career, you worked primarily through body articulation, and when there was a problem to do with musculature or the joints or any of the more subtle sinewy action of the body, you were really concentrating on the structure of the body and realigning. And then you discovered the quantum field within the body matrix, and how through the subtlety of your touch, and it was interesting when you were describing, you were using your hands a lot, as though you were actually working the body matrix.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah.
Because of the sensitivity of these tools that you have. And now you're moving into the quantum field of the body matrix, and you're able to bring about same results, but even more as a result of going into the deep, deep, deep tissue aspect of the way that energy flows through the body. This is miraculous.
It is. It's one of the reasons that I can't retire, because in my own process, I'm learned to a certain level, and then I find that it then rises again. I'm seeing more. The work is going deeper, and I'm being surprised by the joy of the fact that this divine instrument is constantly teaching me. Yeah. what would I do with my hands if I retired? I don't play golf. So, a lot of people retire to play golf. Well, I can't think of anything more boring because the body's teaching me all the time. So as long as I get the measure right, and that's the reason I'm going away to see my daughter in America, leaving, well, when this podcast goes out, I'll be there in the States. And um, the reason is that I need to take a little more time out. And so this is one of these devices. I mean, I only got back from South Africa 4 weeks ago, and here I am going away for another couple of weeks. And so I've said to myself, I'll be a little more retiring, take a little bit more time out, gradually shorten my days, and at some point maybe make it a 3-day week rather than a 4-day week. But I'm never going to retire. Because the relationship to the body is the relationship to the cosmos, and we know that we're connected to everything, and everything channels through the body. And you think, when you said quantum, you got it spot on, because I love that concept in quantum, that everything is quantum entangled. Everything influences everything else, and it's why I'm being taught so much by just continuing to do the work. I've had occasions where I've offered to pay the patient for the experience. Not very practical from the point of view of earning a living, but there are times when I truly say thank you for that experience. It's nice to have good material to work with. Some people are just so ready for this work, and I get so much from it. I learn so much by doing it.
Yeah.
I did want to say a little bit about specific adjusting technique.
Well, I'd love to
introduce.
I'd like to prompt you. It's interesting because I had an extraordinary conversation yesterday with a wonderful man called William Henry, who is an investigative mythologist. And so he was taking us into his remarkable thesis about the interconnectivity of ancient wisdom traditions, and how the cosmology of those wisdom traditions interface with the meaningfulness of our ascension process at this time on planet Earth, and relating to the other star systems in a modicum of way. And one of the things that he said, and it seems to me that it's very pertinent for you, one of the things that he said was that transformation, because you're a transformer, and that's why I beseech you, never, ever stop. I would love you to not use the word retire, but actually to use the word refinement instead, because you're taking time to refine. Anyway, he said, transformation leads to a sense of wholeness, of holiness, and completion that changes our bodies palpably, raising us beyond the human into the cosmic, and therefore enables us to walk with the angels in this sacred realms.
Beautiful.
It's beautiful, isn't it? And it seems to me that you're actually doing the same thing, because I know several people who have been under your hands, and so many of us have shared that we've left feeling as though we were truly engaged with the quantum field, that we had experienced something miraculous, and therefore our consciousness in relation to our psyche, our spirit, was much higher in elevation. So we were able to feel a perceptual expansion. Now,
Wonderful.
I'd love to be inside your hands to discover what's actually taking place. So I'd love for you to reveal to us that, but I'd love to ask you a question as a lead through to that, which is, when somebody arrives, not all people are going to be fully conversant with their bodies, coherent within their bodies. They're experiencing a muscular pain or an articulation problem, or maybe there's chronic fatigue, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, we know that most people are only examining surface value. But you have the inestimable ability of going beyond surface into deep, deep, deep healing. And I wonder what your hands are actually feeling. If you're given just a modicum of information about surface trauma or tremor or lesion or discomfort or dis-ease, your hands go deeper. How does that actually work? Are you sensing it? Do you see it? Do you feel it? Is your visual cortex really open, or is it the kinesthesia of your body that leads you into understanding how to approach the issue?
Great question. And I'm just searching for the right way in to answer the question, because at first, even before I put my hands on, I'm standing behind the patient, because osteopaths do it behind your back. Here's what I tell my patients. But the thing is, what you see when you're observing the spine, because the spine itself is the Appian way, is carrying that connection between heaven and earth, and between earth and heaven. And so when you look in that way, it's the spine that communicates so much about just how much are they in touch with it. Is the energy running all the way through the spine, from coming in from the top, coming down to earth, so to speak? Is it getting stuck part way? Are they up and out? I've had so many youngsters these days who are having difficulty getting into the incarnation. They're somewhat up and out, and of course they're being labeled ADHD or OCD or any number of wonderful labels, but they're actually souls that are not quite sure how to get into the body experience. I've had many years ago, I had a young lady who had to be brought in by her mother because she couldn't function. And her fulcrum was up and out. I mean, I was sitting, it was across the muse and up somewhat. And treatment by treatment, that fulcrum came in, little by little, came into the body. And then every treatment, 2 or 3 segments worth, it would come down further and further. And when we got it down to the level of T9, which is the adrenal stress center, I felt her panic, and I said, what's the problem? And she said, well, actually, I'm afraid that if I become fully grounded, I'm going to lose touch with the knowledge that I'm in touch with. And my answer to her was, grounding your knowledge is going to give you understanding in action as you put the knowledge into action. And when she heard that she could only have understanding if she grounded, she let go. And we brought her down to the base. I did ask her at the end of all her sessions, I said, what did it feel like when you first came in? She said, well, I felt like I was floating like a balloon to a thread in my head, and that if someone came along and cut it, I'd just float away. I mean, poor girl. I mean, she had a very abusive father. And I think this was her way of coping. And so the thing is, she gradually started coming for treatment herself, but she was always late. And then she would come on time. And the day that she came early, we put the flags out because she was able to function in her body. And so what I'm looking at is that energetic pattern. How is it playing through the spine? And is it off to one side, or is it in a coil, or is it in a curve, or any number of possibilities pattern-wise? And the important thing is that the body needs to know that the osteopath has observed the pattern. Now, it doesn't have to be that the way it's observed is exactly how the patient would describe it. But what happens is when you put your hands on, having seen the pattern, the body reads the operator's hands and it knows what I've seen and it knows what my intention is based on my experience, where we would want to take this in order to give the body back to itself. And when that knowledge has been received by the body says, almost like it steps back, looks at itself and says, now I see what you're seeing. And in fact, I know the way to sort that out. And then the system begins to change and treat itself. And the operator is continuing to observe. I look from the side because I do a lot of work sideways on. And the body is treating itself. The operator is supporting and moving with it. Yeah. And there comes this wonderful point where it all goes into stillness. And if the stillness is at least 30 seconds, then there's a transition that takes place. And it always transitions with deepening, softening, deepening, and expanding. So you know that you're in a new level. And if time permits, I can talk about the levels, what they feel like, and what their function is. But in terms of the modus operandi, I'm now, I have to say to students, you learn to touch with your eyes. It was a gift that one of my mentors gave me very early on in practice. He said, learn to touch with your eyes before you even put your hands on. And the eyes can tell you so much. And you are literally touching the body. The body's giving you the information. So I think that probably answers part of what you. Yeah,
absolutely beautiful. And of course, having worked with the human body professionally for the last 45 years as a coach, a presence coach, as a voice coach, I'm just fascinated because it seems to me that you see, feel, and you've just said that really.
Yeah.
The beautiful definition that you just gave us. And so it's coherent with me. This is exactly what I do as well. I see where the holding point is within the being, both from the physiological and an emotional point of view.
Yes.
And then I find ways of either realigning the body or using breath or sound, or indeed the talking cure sometimes to actually get the person to reveal. Because it seems to me, going back to the case study that you just beautifully revealed to us, that one of the great principles, which is why she was out of her body, was to do with a lack of trust. And that when we come back into levels of trust, then we can slip back in a much more ready way. And if there are counterparts that are very disastrous on the outside of us, meaning a dysfunctional relationship with a parent, then we can go to the Divine Father or the Divine Mother. And the matrix opens with healing. However, you were mentioning the subtlety of the levels, and I would love for you to take us into, what you're seeing, rather like a surgeon going into the levels.
Going in. What I would do would describe the levels starting right at the first level. There are 7 levels. There should be no surprise to that. It's a great number. And the first level is the musculoskeletal level. So it's all of these levels are levels within the cranio-sacral mechanism. They just have different, they're a little deeper, a little softer, more expanded. So they have a different quality, which I'm going to describe. So when you put your hands on to begin with, you're in touch with the first level because you're in touch with the body corpora. There it is, that wonderful instrument that contains everything. And it should be no surprise that the body is very earthy in its quality. I mean, not the stuff you dig up in the garden, but that quality of earth that sustains and holds and nourishes and supports. And it contains all the other levels. So it's not just that, it's level 1, it's musculoskeletal. It's the very thing on which everything else depends in order for these levels to function. The musculoskeletal level needs to be working well. And that's where the traditional osteopathic approach comes in, because we still mobility test through the whole spine, find out, we know there are certain key segments. And if those key segments are tied up, then you know that somehow in your work you have to end up releasing the tightening at that pivotal level. And so by the time you've done your course of treatment, all the pivots are moving well, and everything in between is working so much better on a physical level. So if their presentation is very much at that first level, the musculoskeletal, then you're in touch with that earth-like quality. It has a certain density, it has a certain containment, it's holding, and it's very secure. And you can work within that level, presenting the hands as I described earlier, letting the body know that I've seen a certain pattern and I would like to help it in a certain way. And then the system says, I can use that knowledge. In fact, I can use your hands and show you the way in, as I was describing. So my hands are in place and I find a way of engaging that doesn't overimpose. And when I'm working with double handers, with another colleague, I'll often say to them, I think here we need to sit well back. Hands stay in place, but in ourselves, we draw back to give the system the space to bring us in. And you feel this most wonderful, when it's ready, it draws you in. And you know you're on the level from the quality of it. In the musculoskeletal, it's earthy. Do you want me to go on and just take
Well, I'd
you?
love you to take us, if you could just, because in order to retain this information for the listener, it would be wonderful if you could synthesize each level.
Right.
Because that
Okay.
was a very full exposition on the musculoskeletal.
Okay.
But could you
Well,
take
you
us through?
do exactly the same thing intentionally in terms of engaging it, but you have to identify the level first. And so the question is, how do you know you're on a certain level? And it took me a while. I was told that the first three levels were musculoskeletal, nervous system, and emotional. And I'll go through those in a moment and keep going. But I had to work the rest out for myself. And at first I had to kind of guess, where am I? Until one day I suddenly realized that apart from the sense of being a little deeper and a little softer and more expanded, each of the levels had a quality. Now, what is the quality? How would I describe it? And I suddenly realized it's the quality of the elements.
Mm.
It's earth, water, fire, air, ether, and the fact there are 7 levels. I'll describe the quality in the 2 deeper levels as well. But the bottom line is these. I wanted to say this is why I have a flat forehead. You probably noticed I have a kind of flat forehead. And the reason for that is when I realized it, it's one of those moments where you go, of course. And it's this attitude of slapping my head and saying, this is why I have a flat forehead. I spent my life falling in rather than having some genius that took me there. It was like the body's teaching me and suddenly I see it. So the second level is the level of the nervous system. That's where everything that's going on in the nervous system within the body is represented on that level. The patterning in the level, the way the energy moves, any circuitry that you pick up, and it's telling you that it wants to bring that into harmony. And you're using that same intention, presenting the hands, acknowledging the level that you're on. The body then knows you know. And when it's witnessed, it can begin to change. And so, what is the quality of the nervous system? Is fire, inevitably, and so it's that fire quality, and that you can almost feel it crackling, but the quality of fire is not the physical fire, it's the subtle quality. So if you look into the hearth on a winter's day and you get that quality of fire comes back to you in its subtlety, not the physics of the fire itself, but the fieriness of the fire. And that's what the level feels like, is the fieriness of fire. And and as you continue to work the level, it'll always move towards calming down. the movement of the energy within the system on that level will organize itself. And then when it's ready, it moves into relative stillness, maybe 30 seconds or a little more. And then you get a deepening, softening, and expanding.
Mhm.
And that takes you then into the next level, which is the emotional level. And the emotions are actually very fluid. So they have the quality of fluidity, not exactly physical water, but the quality of water in its ability to flow and move in that flowing way. And water, of course, is not like treacle. It can flow. And when you get into that level, you're in touch with the person's organization of their emotional field, if you like. What is the state of their emotions? How are they organizing their emotional body? And you know it because you're on the level of it. You can feel the motion taking place. The body invites you to give it a little bit of support whilst it does its thing. And then it organizes itself vibrationally. You were talking about that earlier. It's the vibration that tells you that the system's up and running, and then it moves into stillness, and it deepens, softens, and expands. And so you can improve a person's emotional system. And remember that the emotions tend to run in the autonomic nervous system, sympathetics and parasympathetic. Something that I discovered quite early on, and I thought that is amazing to think that we feel our emotions not in our head, but we feel our emotions in the body. And it always relates to the various chakras in the body. So when you often say to people, where do you feel it? And they get a little mixed up at times as to what they think they're feeling. But when they show me where they're feeling it, then I know that it's that particular quality that they're working through. They're working with that particular chakra. And as you bring that into harmony, then they feel so much more at ease, so much better organized. They're not so emotional. And so, again, you go into stillness, it softens, deepens, and expands. And the next level in is the level on which intuition functions. Now, intuition is the art of quick perception. It's the fourth level. It's the fourth level now.
Just to keep the listener.
No, quite. No. So we've gone from musculoskeletal, nervous system, emotionals, the emotional level. And now we drop into the intuitive level. Now, intuition is I call it the art of quick perception. It's the faculty that James Bond had. He would open the hotel the door to his hotel room, and his gun would be out because the chair had been moved half an inch. But his intuitive capacity had picked up the fact that something wasn't right. And that's what we do with our intuition. We put together several pieces of information, and in a flash, we have a knowing. Now, I call this knowing streetwise knowing, that instant sense of knowing something. And we use that intuitive ability. Now, intuition works in air. It has a very air-like quality. And air has that wonderful ability to flow much more gently than water. I mean, because it's of a different density and a different quality. And so you're in touch with the person's intuitive level. And as you work with it, they'll organize their intuitive faculty and it'll work for them so much better. And it'll also work out a problem or two or three in the process. Again, goes into stillness, then it deepens, softens, and expands. And then the next level in, you move from air into space. Now, the interesting thing about that quality of space is that we're in a room and the room is filled with air, but it's also the air is filling the space in the room. The thing is that air has weight. one of those early experiments we did at school, the experiment to show that air has weight. And so you would weigh one of those jars, and then you'd put some magnesium in it, light it, it would all the air would be removed. You weigh it again, and it's lighter because air has weight. So you can feel air sitting on you. I mean, air has weight, it sits on us, but space is weightless. So when you're in, if you want to know you're on that level, you're in that level where there's that beautiful quality of space, the lightness of space. Now, the function of this level is how we, if you want to know, we'll get there. No, go on.
This is 5th level.
This is 5th level now.
Okay, yeah.
So we move from 4th level is intuition. We're moving into insight. And now, insight is the ability to really know what something means. I call intuition, if intuition is the parable, insight is when Jesus explained the meaning of the parable to his disciples. So the parable is equivalent to intuition. It gives you a kind of ready reference, but if you really want to know what it means, you've got to use insight, and we all have that faculty of insight. So we can, when we sit still and we contemplate, we get, and there are times when insight comes just in an instant, and you suddenly know something, and you know the meaning of it. It's not that you picked it up by intuition; it's that you really got under the skin of it, and so when they work on this level, these first 5 levels are fairly common. Certainly level 1, 2, and 3, so musculoskeletal, nervous system, and emotional level. You work on those levels all the time because that's the everyday levels of functioning. But when you go into intuition level 4, that happens a little less often. Going into the insight happens only when the person's ready to bring in their insight to inform their life at this time. And then you can help organize the system on that level so it functions better. Now, the next question is, what are the next 2 levels? What do they what do they mean? And what do they feel like? Now, I'm very fond when I'm teaching saying, well, we get to level 5 and the quality of level 5 is space. But space is not the final frontier. Cue Jean-Luc Picard, you know. It's we're going into deep space and even deeper space. So level 6 is deeper space than just space. So it is still space, but it becomes more profound. It is like going deeper out into the stars. And the 7th level is even deeper space. And in fact, the interesting thing about level 7, before I tell you what they are, the interesting thing about level 7 is, like, at this level, the person goes into their cave and the osteopath is sitting there holding the mouth of the cave open, waiting for them to come back out. In a way, and you'll see in a moment why, we don't really have any business in their cave. That's where the person goes, because level 6 is the level that pure love organizes itself in our system. Remember, this is still the cranio-sacral mechanism. It's not out there in the stars. It has it manifests in the body. But there is a level in us where our pure love, our capacity for pure love, has its own patterning. And when you go into that level, you can help the person organize themselves, that capacity for pure love, unconditional love. And then level 7 is what I call the level of being. Now, it's not the person's soul that you're feeling. You're feeling a reflection of their being, their soul, but much like the sun reflected in water, it's not the sun you're looking at. You're looking at the reflection of the sun. So likewise, when we get down into that level, you are engaging with the reflection of the person's soul as it manifests in the mechanism of their cranio-sacral system. And the wonderful thing is, you're not interfering. with you're not getting into an area that they may not want you in. They go there because they know they want to organize the circuitry for the functioning of their soul through their body into everyday life. Does that make sense?
Oh, totally. Well, it does
Yeah.
to me. Absolutely.
Uh, uh,
And of course, you've already given us direction to the deeper levels of 6 and 7. We're leading into a space of complete unconditional love.
yeah.
I love the way that
Yeah.
you say, I stay at the mouth of the cave, and then we go
Right.
deeper. So there's something very atavistic, something
Uh-huh.
very
Uh-huh.
primal about what you're describing, and going into the frontier of what that chthonic, what that atavistic, and that primal essence
Yeah.
is all
Yeah.
about. And it is the frontier of outer space, of course, that is reflected within us, which we're beginning to understand more and more and more about.
More and
Which
more so. More
I
and more
wanted
so. Mhm.
wanted to introduce the idea of quanta at the very
Yeah.
beginning. This
Yes.
is fascinating. I wonder if you could, is there a possibility to ground the wonder of what you've described to us? Is there a case study where you move through all of the levels and discover realization on each level that's palpable?
I I have it. It's not by way of case study. It's by way of what I've observed in practice. And we have on occasions, usually with two practitioners, because you can have one practitioner down on the sacrum with a hand free to put under the diaphragm or on the diaphragm, so they get a nice strong grounding quality from the base practitioner, and then the practitioner at the head, often a hand in the upper dorsals or even between the shoulder blades, and then another hand free to put it on the thorax or on the top of the head or under the head. Um, and I'm often asked, um, I'll answer your question in a moment. I'm often asked, why, how do you know where to place your hands? And I say,
Mm,
well, it's a matter of feeling
mm,
comfortable. The body kicks back to you and says, I don't quite like your hand there. You move your hand a little until it feels good for you, the practitioner, it'll feel good for the patient.
mm,
And so when the hands are in place, then you've got that security with the two practitioners. The patient's going to get 2.5 to 3 treatments worth. It's very good value for money because we don't charge twice the price for a double hander. It's a service, and we only do double handers where we really got to help shift somebody.
mm,
But as you go down through the levels, if they very quickly the levels organize themselves. If this person in this time is going to go to the 7th level, and they're going to go there because they're ready. And this is why I say the first 3 levels are common. Levels 4 and 5 happen quite often, but getting into 6 and 7, that's only really going to happen when the person's ready at whatever stage in their development to have this organized in their body because they've been doing the work on the spiritual level. It's always the people that have been doing the spiritual work that will come in and want the help to organize on those deeper levels because they want their system to reflect the work that they've been doing on inner levels.
mm, mm,
And that's where it comes in. I
mm,
did discover something many years ago which I have not explored enough. But can you imagine the 7 levels repeating like the periodic table?
mm,
So when I realized that, I thought, where did that come from? I was
mm,
actually given that insight. So you can work this with a patient and you can take them into level 7 and they can come back sometime later and you can go through the 7 levels again, but like the periodic table becoming more and more refined.
mm, mm.
And I don't know, maybe we need to do the work to see whether there are.
Well, what comes to my mind, because what you're saying, I just find ravishing, because I
Mm,
cohere with it all. And it's so fascinating to hear the way you orchestrate the idea and the physical experience and the intuitive and going deep into insight. I find it absolutely fascinating. But what comes to my mind is that those of us that are engaged in the ascension process, that we have this very open conversation about the fact that something monumental and unprecedented is happening within our bodies at this time. At least the annals of history have not revealed to us if it's happened before. And what I mean by that is that we're moving from the carbon body, into the crystalline body. So we're becoming lighter. And as a result, light from inside is literally coming out to the outer part of our bodies. So we're beginning to, aurically, I see in many people who are considerably awakened to their spiritual process and are devotees, they're really dedicated and disciplined about their meditation. As
Indeed, yeah.
you've just ravishingly taken us, each step you take us back to stillness, that there's that point of stillness.
Yeah.
And then revelation takes place. It's like the stillness is a divine portal that allows us to understand a much greater intelligence that's on the other side or around it or above it or within it.
Yes.
And I just wonder if you had anything to say about the nature of the transformation of carbon into crystalline. Anything?
That's a question. When you say crystalline in your terminology, it becoming more refined.
Yeah. So literally the silica within our bodies, which is a formant crystal, is not a complete crystal.
Yes.
Physics, but the silica is beginning to awaken to contain more light, and as a result of that, a level of immaculate refinement begins to happen. So I'll give you an experience which is in the forefront of my consciousness, and I don't mind sharing my own case study with you because you've been working on my body, that you were able, this pain that I had in my right hip, that you were actually able to take me deep, 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 where your hands led my body into 4, 5 levels of healing. And then we kept on nudging up against the 6th level, and it wasn't revealing fully. And so, I've been very, very busy, which is why I haven't been able to come back to see you. But I thought I needed to go deeper into the hypnotic aspect of the way that I can access deep memory. And I went into a regression with actually, interestingly, an ex-client of mine who's become one of the world's leading regression therapists, who is a hypnotherapist, but deep into regression. And I discovered the insight was that I was holding the recognition of a trauma. It was not my trauma, but the recognition of a trauma during the end times of Atlantis, because I saw the body structure of Atlantis, so to speak, being torn apart by meteorological or meteoric catastrophe. And I was that level of trauma, and it had become my trauma, almost as though I was actually safekeeping the trauma. And that opened up the field within, the deep, insightful field. And as a result, no pain.
Fascinating.
So that's fascinating. I saw the crystals.
Yes. How wonderful that you then went on to have that experience, because I couldn't fix it, so to speak.
Well, I don't think you do fix. I think you open and facilitate. And really, really powerful. What's beautiful about all that you shared on this occasion and during our deep dialogue before, and I recommend that everybody's listening, please go back into the library. And maybe what we can do, Ryan, I hope you're listening. Ryan's my tech manager, everybody, that we may be able to link the two dialogues so they're easily accessed. So that people can, Ryan said, I am. He's writing it. That is possible.
Okay.
See, there's a progression because you're going deeper and deeper and deeper, which is what the promise of this particular dialogue is actually all about. The miracle of body SOMA. Your insights are just, I use the word yet again, they're ravishing. There's something so palpable, the way that you're able to see. So we'll leave the whole nature of the crystalline alone for the moment. But
Yeah.
there's something I'm really intrigued by in terms of somatic healing, because we are both of a certain age, you and I, and we know that we're very open to the flexibility and the expansion of our chronology. But we're also, from a conventional point of view, we keep meeting this thing of aging.
Yeah, rather. Yes.
You know, even if it is that we're, looking at ourselves in the mirror and thinking, what happened? First
I
thing
know.
when we stepped out of the shower, we're naked in front of the bathroom mirror. It's sort of like, wow, wait a minute. And we remember the young men that we were and the
Oh,
muscle
tell
tone,
me. It's
etc.
not just the floor that creaks in the morning these days, It's those first few steps. I think to myself, my patients could see me now. But by the time I'm working, yeah, and of course the other thing is because this work is working with the patient's energy, but energy often comes through to meet the need. I'm finding that my body is benefiting because of the nature of the work that I'm doing.
Right.
There's
Right.
healing coming through all the time. I saw a baby earlier this week. They're 16 weeks old, and this little one was straight from heaven. I mean, not only that, there were two presences in the room that I could intuit. And they weren't my guides, because I know my guides. And so they were there for the baby. And this little one is going to be phenomenal. As so many of these children coming in now are going to be just phenomenal. But they're going to need help to hold their bodies together so that they can function on a day-to-day level and in the world with the work they need to do.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing that always amazes me is all of this amazing structure comes from a single cell. And it just divides, and the same genetic material in every nucleus, and yet you get this phenomenal form. When you go into the detail, you think, how is that done? From a single cell to 60 to 70 trillion cells, organized in such perfection. And you think, we should be down on our knees more often, just like moments of rapture, because of the body that we're given is a reflection of the cosmos, and the intricacy of what happens. Even the life in a cell is a universe. And you think, how is that done?
Yeah. So that's the miraculous part of our conversation, isn't it? Of looking into the extraordinary, as you say, those values of ascension when we are in awe and in wonder at the form of our bodies, but also the internal capacity leading us towards an infinite potential. And my question about aging, or about, maybe I should remove the word aging and talk about chronology.
Okay.
But, my question is, what is the purpose of chronology? What is the purpose of maturation?
I mean, you and I both have read literature which has said that there is no reason for aging. Yeah, we are conditioned inevitably by everything we see around us, and everybody's getting older, aren't they? So we're doing the same thing. But in fact, you do get some people who, I heard a metaphysical teacher once say, people stop aging at different ages. You get people who stop at 30, 40, 50, 60, and people who just keep on aging all the way through their life. But you get these people who are so young in an older body, but even their body is doing so much better because it's not aging. And you've got to ask the question, the power of thought and the power of the mind, that we sentence ourselves with the thoughts that we think. And the number of times you catch yourself saying something and you think, hang on a minute, do I really want to take that on as a sentence, or do I want to change that now? And very pertinent to the way the body is changing anyway, with the consciousness shifts that are taking place these days. And it's our mind has to change.
Yeah. Well,
For
may
sure.
I also reinterpret the way we think and the way we feel, which
Yes.
is the total flow of mind consciousness, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that it's interesting in the Tibetan wisdom schools, the brain is here and the feeling state is here. They, it sounds like a clever irony, but they turn it around to become truly present about the wonder and the awe of how the terrestrial is truly celestial.
It's all the celestial interplays with the physical. The physical is meant to take us to the celestial, for sure. And the better organized it is, the more capacity we have for understanding. I've been reading Yogananda's the book by Yogananda called The Divine Romance. It's one of 3 books that were written from the talks that he gave. They took it down in shorthand originally. And because that was so long ago, before recording devices. And he talks about the romance with God, that you are so filled with for him, he knows God in a way that all of us aspirants can only hope that we could attain, that state where you're so infused with godliness and God awareness. And this is what the body is for. I mean, he even says in some of the dialogues, he said, you need to get the work done whilst you're still in the body. Because when you leave, you ain't going any higher than where you are as you depart. It's a depressing thought, Stuart, I have to say, that wherever you actually are, once you leave the body, it's going to be a little while before you get the chance to come back in again,
Well, this is why I was asking the question about chronology, you see, because I've just turned 70, and so of course I'm reflecting on the 70 years and how fast it's gone, and what is its value, and what can I maintain, and what are my next 30 years or more about?
Yes,
because
indeed.
Though I've just begun, that I've awoken at this time, not that I've just woken up, I've been waking up for many years. And so it seems to me, and I offer this as a suggestion for the hypothesis, what is the point of age, is the point of chronology, that the older we become in earth years, because obviously we're living a linear form, which when we move from body to spirit, time ceases to exist, is about capacity, that we become more aware of the capacity of what it is to be human, what it is to interrelate with the 4 elements, earth, water, air, and fire, physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and hydrogen, and how we conduct the interplay of the symphony that we have with the cosmos and, if you like, with Mother Nature primarily, and conduct meaningful relationships. It's about all of these different capacities. And of course, how do we deal with untruth? Because we're hardwired or soft-wired for truth. It's an inherent part of our spiritual toolkit that we're born with. But how do we adhere with truth when the world is full of falsehood? How do we become discerning and not hypercritical, etc., etc.?
Yes.
The divine romance and how compassion is infinitely part of that, and I haven't read the Yogananda thesis or lecture for a long time. I mean, he's one of my great saints that I always go to.
Amazing.
I mean, I always go to Lake Shrine, which is where he died, and Gandhi's ashes are there, and it's just one of the most extraordinary places in the entire world. But the nature of romance is always about trying to interpret what that ideal of love is that we haven't experienced in our carbon or earthly state. That's how it feels to me. Our time, unfortunately, has reached a point of completion, but I would love
What a
just to
shame.
extend for a moment, just for a moment, if I may, and ask you the question is, what's the question that we haven't asked in relation to the rich unfolding nature of the wonders that you've given us?
I think the question that I would ask is, if this is how the body is organized and one can serve it in that way, that capacity was put there in the form, as the form was however it came into creation, all of those wonderful abilities to raise our game spiritually. And I actually believe that a body where these levels are as organized as they may be, because each of us is a different place in ourself, and once the levels are organized, then we're in top condition for the only journey, which is up and out, the divine romance, the presence of God in every moment. And I think that is the role of the body, that we learn on all of these levels, and what we are learning when it's organized well. We've got, it's like being fit for those really fit athletes. I mean, I've never seen so many six packs in my life in one place. I mean, was phenomenal, just beautiful to watch the Olympics. Yeah. But that's
So
for me.
My interpretation of that is that we're really moving away from the neuroses of separation into the all oneness of what the divine romance is, and that if we awaken that within our bodies, then we're already on a pretty good circuit. And you do this for us. So if you haven't, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to have hundreds of people coming to see you.
Yeah, it's going. Yes, it's going to be a waiting list.
We will make sure, ladies and gentlemen, that there are indications of how you can reach, in a very judicious way, how you can reach Mr. Gez Lamb. And so on your behalf, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank this wonderful master, this wizard, who has been so wonderfully generous in spirit and also in information. Bless you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I hope this is the beginning of another conversation.
It is. There'll be another one down the road, for sure.
And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening in. And keep sending us all of your wonderful considerations. Just write emails or comments in the irrelevant section below. And I hope you come back to witness more deep dialogues. Namaste, namaste, namaste. Thank you, Ryan.